And there are two hypotheses now with Parkinson's: brain first or body first. And those kind of go with colonization of specific microbes through breathing or chemical assaults coming through the nose. And, that barrier right there close to the brain and the impact of what's going on there. Or, things coming in orally, whether that's, consumed chemical assaults and that sort of thing, or specific microbes, or both. And how the two different brain first or body first move at different paces, and how that kind of works in the system.
There's so much to learn in all this. Because I've heard also that, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and there was a connection between mouth bacteria and rheumatoid arthritis, but there's also a connection between, I believe, mouth bacteria and Alzheimer's.
Yes.
So, because of course we have a microbiome in our mouth as well, and on our skin, everywhere we've got a microbiome. The biggest one is in the gut, of course, but these microbes are impacting our lives every day and can, well, of course, manifest in illness if they're out of balance. As you said, the problem is with chemicals, with the food that we're eating. Stress, plays a role as well. What did you learn about the role of stress, Martha? Because I'm always concerned about this, and it's where I've zoned in on.
So I think that really came to light even more as I was writing the book. I knew stress played a role, and I did start working on a Voices of Parkinson's docuseries not long before John passed away. So most of the work was done after John passed away. But starting to put together the picture and looking back at John's and my life of different stress points, like even before he was diagnosed, he was on a rafting trip down the Gunnison River that nearly killed him. And, that was a huge stress, fight or flight thing that, could have triggered something. There's a traditional Chinese medicine woman who has a book called Stuck on Pause that talks about events like that can be a triggering event. But also, I worked out of town 50% of the time. So I was gone on airplanes. We had young kids. John was staying at home with the kids, raising the kids. There's lots going on when you got 3 kids at home, and, you're trying to juggle all of those things. And so that was a big part of the stressor. He was also part of Douglas County Search and Rescue, which is like here in Colorado in the Rampart Range of the mountains. So when I was home, he would get these phone calls at, 10, 11 o'clock at night. So-and-so's missing. Like, I got to go out with search and rescue. So, wake him up or postpone his sleep and then be out all night long searching for somebody.
And that's not a peaceful experience.
That is not a peaceful experience. And sometimes they would find people who were, dead. And that's also kind of a shocking. Yeah. So, there are all these little stressors. And then, one of the things I learned over the years, I think I touch on this in the book. I do talk about it a lot of times, is just my own learning about myself and my contribution to creating stress, because I'm a type A person. I was trying to solve the problem. I worked initially, before I founded the company, I worked in a very high-powered corporate job, high expectations, real intensity, and I brought that same action home. And that creates a low-grade chronic stress for everyone, and a feeling that, oh my God, I could never meet this woman's expectations. And I came to that realization, I'll say a little late in the process, 10, 12 years in, partly also from seeing the same behaviors in other wives of men with Parkinson's. And I'm like, oh my God, we're part of the problem. And so I started working on my own behavior and like turning down the dial of my own behavior. And John we had a number of conversations about it and how much he appreciated me actively working to change my own behavior to help modulate his stress level. So that was a stress level. We moved, we built a house. Building a house is a stressful event. We lived there for 9 years. Then we moved again. We moved several different times. Moving is an incredible stressor that you don't even realize at the time how much stress that creates. So it's all this sort of little buildup. And there's something called allostatic load, which is now becoming more appreciated, that, you can layer and layer and layer on these stressors. You're resilient. And then it's like the straw that breaks a camel's back. It might be something really small, and it doesn't seem like, how could that have been it? But it's like that last piece of the allostatic load that just is like, and it's like, you can't take that one straw off the camel and the camel get up. You've got to like unwind a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is emotional. So, and that's something else I talk about in the book. And I think you work with people on this too, is, our emotions and the spiritual aspect of, like not feeling worthy. And, if you go back to my high expectations of people, I like, can I meet her expectations? It also goes back into religion. Can I meet, God's expectations? Am I worthy?
Religion's expectations
and religious expectations that are set on us. And, John went to 12 years of Catholic school, which is a pretty good indoctrination of thinking that you might not be totally worthy.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So much going on there. And do you think sometimes I really, I'm like sort of like mind, body, spirit stuff, but also like very physical. Like the physical aspect of that is that it disrupts the microbiome.
Well, it disrupts the microbiome, but I think it also disrupts like some of our neurosensory aspects. I have a chapter in the book. It's called The Mouth of God. And I ended up connecting that to a Radio Lab episode that I listened to called Song of the Cerebellum. And that's this part of the back part of the brain, which they used to think wasn't really important. But it's this really important timing engine that's sort of coordinating everything. And that's also, where these signals of stress and things come through. So, and the microbiome, of course, is signaling with all of that too. So.
Yeah. And it could be sort of the downstream thing of your stress. So then your digestive system isn't working so well. So then it's not producing as much stomach acid. So that, those kinds of, it's like a fallout effect, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it could be that. Okay. You've mentioned the book a couple of times. So we need to tell people about your book. It's called Connected: Love, Loss, and the Unseen Forces Behind Chronic Disease. So we've been talking a lot about Parkinson's, but really what you're talking about in this book is really all chronic disease, but the connection with the microbiome, but also so much more, the love story with you and your husband. And I'm so sorry that he did pass. It's such a long journey for you, but putting this book together must have been so, I guess, cathartic for you.
Absolutely. I mean, it really was. John and I had talked many times about writing a book and telling our two different aspects of our story. And we just never got there. So the process of writing the book and trying to pull as much of John's story and his resilience, and the fact, I want people to know, we got that diagnosis when we heard drugs work for 5 years or whatever, and we're thinking life is over. And, when you read the book, you will see that we had an incredible and adventurous life that was completely full of love, friendship, excitement. John loved to fish. He continued fishing all the way up to the last year of his life. We did ice climbing in Colorado all the way up through, I think, 2020 until he got COVID. And so, like, I want people to know that your life is not over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big part of the story. But it's also, in part, there's a lot of spiritual journey in there, my own spiritual journey and John's spiritual journey to, ultimately understanding forgiveness and worthiness, so that when he did pass, I think could be in a better place.